I am still waiting for some parts to come in, so we're going to go ahead and finish up these relays. These are the two flasher relays that we're going to be working on. This one I've already worked on. I've got it all set up. Now this is a single pole double throw. Relay. In other words, there's two relays in one. Now what do I mean by that? Well, if I take a pencil here and I run it down the center here, there will be a relay. If I can keep it standing up here, there'll be a relay on the right and a relay on the left, and it'll be one input in and two inputs out. As you can see in the original configuration, I had one input in, this copper thing, and we had two out. See the separation between them right here? And so back here, since this one here and this one here are the same on the top set of contacts. See, those are the top set of contacts. They're not on the bottom. And the other set of contacts, of course, is connected to this whitish metal here. So on this one, in order to achieve that, we had to put a jumper between this set of contacts and that set of contacts over there. So that's what I did. I used connectors and soldered them in place after I hooked a wire to it. I'm probably going to put a little liquid tape on here because this is the power wire that comes in that supplies juice to the whole thing. That's jumpered right there. And why did I do that? Well, because that wire was the one that was connected to right there. And it was the wire that was right there. And it went up and it eventually made contact with this after the relay worked, and then it sent out the two signals out each of the individual poles, or each individual little relays is what I call them. So I went ahead and I jumpered it. Now this is all under the instructions of Brendan, my mentor. I asked him every question to get through it. Pretty much knew what I was doing, but you always double check. I mean, why would I want to solder it all up and then Brendan said, well, you got it wrong. Well, I don't want to do that. You know, you work your way through. When you have a mentor, you bounce everything off of him, whether you know the answer or not, just to be on the safe side. Not for every situation, but some that are a little tricky. In particular, this relay here, this double relay. He's the one that found the relay on the internet, the single pole double throw. It was a good price. It was only 12 bucks, and it's all wired up and ready to go. These are the coil wires right here, and this coil, original coil, only had a single wire, as you can see right here. This is the original coil again. It only had a single wire. Let me zoom in here a little bit. It had a single wire right there, and this over here was grounded, okay, to the case, which in turn was grounded to one of the, to the bottom, like that one is. So what I had to do was I hooked up the one wire here, just like on that relay, and then I hooked up a grounding wire to the other one because I don't have a case like that anymore. So I had to ground it separately with this black wire. I have it coiled around, and I put one of these on the end, and I will find a grounding spot for it. And that's about it. By the way, before we get started, some of you might want to know, well, where do you get the heat shrink at? Well, you can buy it at Harbor Freight. They used to sell this. It's been a while since I bought it. I mean, I've got enough heat shrink to last me until the next century. But you can get different size. They don't give it away. I'm going to let you know that right off the bat. But it comes in these different sizes. Once you get a box of it, it'll last forever. I think I got this as a Christmas present years ago, and I still got it. And then, of course, I've got tons of other heat shrink down in my drawer down here from working on radios and everything. I got all kinds of stuff. I got buckets of it. So I don't know. It's just everywhere. Every time I had a chance to pick up some, I grabbed it. In order to tin anything at all, you need to make sure it's clean. You can't really be doing it with any rust or a lot of corrosion on it or oxidation. One way you can clean these things up is with a pencil eraser, believe it or not. Remember when we were kids, we used to shine up pennies I don't know if any of you youngsters have done it, but back in the old days, back in the day, we used to shine up pennies using pencil erasers. They would shine up really nice and coppery. And but you can still do that. It's better to use what they call they're hard to find nowadays, but they're ink erasers. They're white. These have a lot of oil in them. This kind here, the white ones didn't have any oil, but it works because you can take alcohol after you clean them up and everything. Take regular old alcohol and a brush, a little alcohol brush, and just kind of clean them up, which I've already done. So they're all shined and ready to go. Now all I'm going to do is the first thing you do is you always keep the tip of your iron clean. You can do it with paper towel. Always keep, see that stuff that's on there? We're going to go ahead and clean it so it's nice and shiny. See there? You don't want to do that. You go ahead and put your solder on when you're sticking it in the soldering holder. That keeps the tip from burning away. It'll burn the solder away first. Put your solder on there, and then when you take it out, you got to clean it off. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay a small layer of solder right along the inside edge right here. I put a little bit on the iron, that's all. Heat it up. It'll heat up quickly. Just melt it on there. That's it. Done. Let's do the second one. Now you don't want to be cooking too much of the solder too long. Okay, that's about all I want to solder on that before cleaning my tip again. Very important to keep these tips clean. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the thing around and do the same thing to the other side. We'll go ahead and now we'll do the other side. It's really easy to do. It doesn't take but a few seconds. And kind of put it up on the top and do that number. Now I'm going to tin the wires the same way. The wires that are going to go on there, the end of the wires are going to be tinned the exact same way. Tinning them. I've got a layer of solder. Now they've got something to grab a hold to when I heat them up. Hope that helps. I might stick around and let you see me solder at least one wire on. And when I do one, it's going to be the same for all the rest. But I'm going to cut them the same length. I want them to all be the same length. When they come out of there, I want them all to be the same length. Now this red wire right here, since I only have these 3 wires, I'm going to go ahead and snip them all off. I know what they are. The blue wire goes to the coil. So that just leaves the last 2, which goes to the other 2 pins on this gray relay. But this red one here, which is one of the outputs, has been chewed on by a mouse. So what I'm going to do, the wire's still intact, it's not chewed up, I ohmed it out, it's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip this red heat shrink up there, and I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down, and that'll insulate it. So let me get that part done. I'm just going to go ahead and snip all 3 of these. Alright, I've stripped back this wire, not too long. I don't want it to be too much longer than the tabs on the relay. I might take it back a little bit more. Let me see here. We'll take it back just a little bit more. The problem you have on these old wires is they get corroded on them. They get oxidized. And boy, I'll tell you what, when that happens, they turn black. And we'll take the old wire brush and kind of give them a little brush there gently. And when they turn black, then with that oxidation on it, you can't get that solder to stick. It will not stick. So the best thing to do is try to get it off as much as possible gently. I'm not tearing it up. The wires will splay out a little bit as you do this. Don't get excited. Just kind of concentrate on what you're doing. What you're doing right now is just trying to get that black crap off of there, okay? Because it will not stick with that stuff, I'm telling you. And it always seems like the thicker wires are the ones that always get oxidized the most. Although I've seen a lot of thin ones too, but the thick ones always seem to have it. It's almost like an affliction with them. Well, it's not too bad. Alright. Alright, now all I'm going to do is take this heat shrink, measure it out, run it down the wire all the way, and then cut it and then shrink it down. I'll be back when that's done, and then by that time I should have the other 2 wires also stripped. I've got them cleaned as much as I can. I'm going to go ahead and clean the solder off there. Remember, anytime you put your soldering iron in a holder, do this. Put some solder on there, like that. And go ahead and then stick it in the holder. What it does, it protects the tip from being boiled away. It boils the solder instead, okay? Very important little tip. And Let me go ahead and get that solder brushed off of there. I just brush it on the concrete floor and sweep it up later. It was pretty oxidized. All of these were pretty darn oxidized, so I brushed them all. Let's see if I can get some solder to be taken. I'll tell you what we need to do is put some flux on those babies first. Let's go ahead and get some flux. Let me check the camera and make sure I didn't bump the tripod too much. No, we're doing all right. Okay, now this is flux that I bought at Lowe's. It's paste flux, general purpose. Works great. I've had it for 10 years. I haven't used it up yet. I've used a little bit of it, but not much. You take your old wire and then just kind of jam it down in there. And jam it down in there. Be careful not to splay each of the individual strands. You don't want that to happen. You want to try to keep them together. Just kind of stick them down in there. Now, when you get all done, you will have to take the wire brush and alcohol and clean these things, because this stuff will start to melt and boil and do all kind of weird stuff. But it does clean the copper. Flux is a cleaner. It's a kind of it's kind of an acid type of cleaner. And okay, here we go. Let's see if I can get it to work. If it won't stick, then I'll have to work at it off of camera until I do get it stuck. I want solder on all three of these, so when I solder them to the pins, they'll stick. They'll have solder in two places. It's just a matter of adding heat. Now, this one's doing pretty good. Okay, that's one. It's soldered. See, I just laid a little bit of solder on there, tinned it up. Let's try this one. Hopefully this one will tin just as good. They were pretty, yeah, see, this one wants to be a booger about it. You really got to lay the heat on. Sometimes you got to put another layer. You got to brush it again, put another layer of flux on it. You just got to keep working at it. Just don't lose patience. Don't lose patience. I'll try one more. If it doesn't work, I'll just have to work on it off camera. Okay, this one's taking solder a little better. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, we're getting solder on this one. Good. Try one more time up here. If not, I'll have to reflux it. Try it again. Cover it all. Yeah, she doesn't want to stick. No, see, that's what happens. That's exactly what I was telling you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set my iron back in the holder. I'm going to brush it with the wire brush. And then I'm going to reflux it. And hopefully it'll stick on the next go-round. Alright, we got her. It took a little bit of extra heat and a little bit of extra flux. Now, it's not a good idea to really flux the end of wires, but we have no choice here. When they're this badly oxidated, we have to use what we have. Normally, a good clean copper wire, you strip it back, and it'll just suck the solder right up as soon as you heat it. But when you have something like this, the risk you have is if you put too much solder on those wires and it gets sucked up underneath the insulation, say up to here. I hope you can see that in the camera. Let's say you got this sucked up solder up under, it's called wicking. If it wicked it up underneath the insulation, it could break up under there at some point in time and look like it's completely intact, and you would never know it. So, but what choice do you have? Now, there is such a thing as a heat sink as you can buy. I don't have any, but that would fasten around the wire here next to the insulation. That would prevent that wicking, but I don't have any. You can use, I guess, I don't know, you could use a little alligator clip for it, I suppose. That would work a little bit, but I didn't do it. These are really, really old wires, and they are really oxidized, but hopefully they'll go on there. What I'm going to do now is take my insulation that I cut earlier and slide it down over the wires, like so. Hopefully you're seeing this. I got to make sure I got it in the camera. I have to keep bouncing around looking. And then we'll put one in here, over the top of the red. Then we'll put this one here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and see if that's in there. That's not in the solder. That's not in the camera lens. Let me go ahead and move the camera lens so you can see what I'm doing here. That's cool. Let me move it just a little bit around there, a little bit up. Okay, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first wire, I'm going to put some solder back on my tip. Let me clean my tip off. Always clean your tip. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put some solder on the tip, then I'm going to lay this wire up here like so, the first one, whichever one I choose. And I'm going to go ahead and lay it on top, and then hit the bottom with the soldering iron, and the two will just melt together. That's all there is to it. Now there are coils you can get that'll, you can make coils and put them on there. I want to be careful with this. I want to be able to remove it easily in the future, but I guarantee you will not pull these off after they've been soldered, okay? You cannot pull them off. You will break the wire before you pull them off or break the pin. And let me see, now I'm supposed to do the coil, so 85 and 86 is the coil. So that means the blue one's going to be first. So 85 and 86 are the two corner ones, here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this bottom one right here with the blue one. So let me go ahead and get some solder on the old tip. Once I solder this, the instructions will be over. I'm sorry I took so long, but I did promise one of our subscribers that I would show them how to do it. And that's why we're here. We're here to learn things. We're not here to entertain everything. Okay, now here we go. Let me see, did I get that thing flat enough? I don't know. Let me add a little more solder just to make sure. I'm going to redo that again and make sure it's flat on that thing. There we go. Come on, baby, heat up. There we go. I don't think I quite had it flat enough. Okay, that's nice and secure. Okay? Put some solder on my iron. I want to shut this camera down here. That's all we're going to do. And then when we get all three of these soldered up, I'm going to take these heat shrinks. I'm going to slide them all the way on down, just like that. And I'm going to shrink them up. I'll show you how to do that when the time comes. Let me go ahead and get the rest of the wires done. Everything is soldered up, and I've got the heat shrink slid down over the top of the wires and the terminals. Now we're now getting ready to shrink the tubing. And this is a sore spot with me. I see people on the internet all the time doing radio repair and different things, wires on the car, and they're all the time taking their soldering iron. They do everything right up to the point where it's time to shrink the heat shrink. And they'll take their hot soldering iron, they'll run it up and down the heat shrink all over it, like leaving little bits of solder stuck to it there. Oh God, that is so amateurish, There's only one way to heat shrink, or to shrink heat shrink tubing, and that's with a heat gun. Now I know there's guys out there that are saying, oh, I've been doing it that way with a soldering iron for 50 years. Well, if you've been doing it that way for 50 years, you've been doing it wrong for 50 years. There's only one way to do it, and that's to use a heat gun. They're cheap. You can buy them on eBay for practically nothing. Let me make sure I'm in the camera here. I want you to be able to watch this. Yep, I guess I'm still in the camera. I like this little Wagner jobby. I think I only paid like 22 bucks. You can buy them new, used, downtown, whatever. They're really cheap. You don't need an expensive one. It's got 2 speeds, high and low, and it comes with these fittings that you can put on the end. I like this one because it's got a small hole there. I can direct my heat a little better. And let me make sure you're seeing this. Yeah, okay. All right, now all I'm going to do now, you don't put the heat right down in there like that. No. You back it away. You move it around, you get between, over the top. I'm not going to cook it, I'm going to shrink it because I want it to stay in place. And once you check it all the time, you'll see that it shrinks up. And here we go, I'm going to put it on low. Takes a little while to heat up. Be careful, this thing will burn your hands. Push it all the way down. Remember, slow and easy. And it will shrink up. Get it from underneath. You'll move around. You want to make sure you use the right size heat shrink too. You can't put, 1-inch heat shrink on a 1/8 inch wire. Yeah, I'm talking about diameter here, There you go. We're looking real good right now. I'm not going to overdo it. After you've used heat shrink for a while, and by the way, when you set this thing down, don't put it on anything. It takes a long time for that heat gun tip to cool down. A long time. Keep it away from you. Keep it away from anything that'll melt. That's it, folks. I'm going to go ahead and put some wire ties around this right now. That's all I'm going to do to it. and we'll go ahead and call this one quits. I think that should do it. We're going to be testing this soon. I just want to keep the wires from being caught on anything. You know, it's not that big a deal. I might put a second one down here. I think I will. I'll just go ahead and put 2 down there. You know, this will be going in the trunk somewhere, and I probably won't see it again for 150 years. But I guarantee in 150 years I'm going to look. This will probably be time for a change. Well, our horns are looking a whole lot better now. I went ahead and painted them with a combination of gloss black and primer. And then after they dried, I hit them with satin clear, which dulled them down a little bit. I didn't want some bright, shiny hunk of junk. So right now we're going to put them back in the car. And this is the bolt that bolts them to the fender, or the front part of the car. But first I'm going to take the moto tool and remove some paint around the hole down to the metal where this bolt goes through. Well, as you can see, it's all rusted around there. We're going to go ahead and get rid of all that crap. We want a good solid ground. A ground is a ground, you know. There's never any rush. We're going to go ahead and take care of that. Right now, just got a little tiny grinding stone, just like I used on the inside of the car there. And we're just going to grind around there until that rust is all gone. I'm not going to go out here in the painted area. I'm going to kind of keep it in that circle right there and see how well I can do. Well, isn't that interesting? Underneath the rust is paint. Well, no wonder they weren't getting a ground. I made the area larger because I decided to change bolts and use this one with these good star washers still on them. And that'll really help a lot dig into that metal. The bolts that were on the horn, I don't think they're original. They've probably been taken out and put in, or I'm not exactly certain, but they don't have a star washer underneath, whereas this one does. And I had 2 of them, one for that side and one for this side. We're going to go ahead and bolt those old horns up and get some good ground there. Now, a horn to me is pretty important. You know, you don't need a horn very often, but when you do, you want to make sure it's there. Everything is hooked up to include the wires. Let's see what we've got. I'll be a little upset if that horn doesn't blow now after all that work. I at least need one of them. This one on the left didn't blow at all. So apparently that one's the only one working. I don't know why that is. I imagine I'll be taking the steering wheel off sooner or later anyway. Well, there's something wrong with the switch on this one. They're kind of sick sounding, but better than what we had, huh? We'll come back to the horns later. We have some other things that need to be done. At least we're getting sound out. It sounded like they were getting sound out of both of them. And as a matter of fact, it's easy to check, I guess. Let's go ahead and disconnect the wire from this one on the driver's side. If I get sound out of the other one, we'll check them both. Well, that one's got a pretty good sound to it. Well, that wasn't too bad. Let's go ahead and unplug. That one's the one that blew over here. Let's unplug this one and plug this one back up. See if we get sound out of it. Alright, here we go. They sound pretty good, but they don't sound good together. Alright, here we are with both of them hooked up again. Okay, that's a whole lot better. That's a whole lot better. Let's see if we got anything over here. Nothing on this. Oh, but now we're getting that too. Well, how about that? Old Buzz must have went back home to Portland. I'm a happy camper. Job done. Incidentally, this morning, the temperature in Conway, Arkansas was the exact same temperature as it was up in Detroit. 28 degrees. What is that crap? I hate it. I've been blaming Brendan for sending that crap down here. That's where he lives, up there in no man's land. Okay, I need to go in the house and warm up a little bit, have a cup of coffee. Today is the 19th of December, Saturday, and our parts that I'm expecting have still not arrived. I'm hoping they'll be in today's mail, which the mailman hasn't arrived. If not, it'll be Monday, hopefully. And then we can go ahead and get the taillight lenses in and everything else. So in the meantime, I'm going to be piddling around again with our relays. I'm going to tape them both together into one unit. So, you know, they'll be separate, but they'll be taped together in one unit, easier to handle. And I removed this thick This was a 8 gauge, I think it is, an 8 gauge wire. I removed that from one of the relays. We don't need one quite that thick. I talked with Brendan about it. He said, you don't have to worry about it. It's only the coil. The coil, you know how thin the copper on the coil is. You saw that. So we'll go ahead and use this as our ground wire. It's 22 gauge. I went ahead and wired it up on both of them. I'm going to put a connector on each one, right like so. This is for 22 gauge wire. And we'll find a place to, I'm going to go ahead and plug these up, and then we'll find a place to ground those two, and we'll be done with that until the rest of the stuff comes in for now. By the way, those of you who might want to know what this single throw double pull relay is, this is the brand name, and this is the part number. Okay, it's got a 12 volt DC coil, and it's good up to 30 amps. It also occurred to me that I had forgotten to give you the actual part number on these little gray relays. That's it right there, the name and the part number. So you can write that baby down. And I don't know what this number on the side here is. I have no idea. Just know that it's made in the United States. That's good enough for me. Well, there's our finished product for now. I've got that taped together, like I said. I ran around there about 4 or 5 times. I want it nice and secure. And the new ends are on for the grounds. I'm going to ground them both. I'll probably ground this thing the same places that that other ground that I put in that I had to grind away the paint with. For those of you who don't remember or wasn't here, I'll let you see it. But anyway, she's good to go. And heat shrink. You heat shrink your connections the same way we did up here. Well, I had some second thoughts before running out there, dashing into the car and hooking it up. I didn't like the idea, actually, these two ground wires just sort of dangling off individually. So I went ahead and heat shrunk them together with a nice big old piece of heat shrink. Took 2 pieces. I just put one on and shrunk it down, and then slid the other one over and shrunk it down so they're together. And I used a couple of spot ties or wire ties to kind of keep them in place, which looks a whole lot better on the end, okay? Easier to locate. Now at a later date I'll probably put this entire setup inside of a some kind of a box or something and drill a hole for these 2 plugs to go through and for the ground wires to go out. I don't know. We'll worry about that when the time comes. Now we hook them up. Alright, she is connected up, the entire both sets, and I've got, it's kind of partially put together. I'm kind of glad too, because these babies were really tough to get to put together, but this is just temporary. And I also have the ground wires connected over here where these 2 original type ground wires were. Just ran it down to took out the screw and bolted it back down, all 4 together now, bolted to the body of the car. So this is just temporary. And now we can check this thing out, but the chances are it won't work. Now why is that? Well, the relays, the only thing the relays do is close and engage the taillights. So they'll blink on and off. What controls the blinking on and off is not these babies here. What controls the blinking on and off is the flasher. The flasher is located up underneath the dash, about that long. I assume, I haven't seen it yet, but they're round. Standard flasher. The flasher works off current flow. They get hot, they open up, they cool down, they close again. There's a set of contacts inside the flasher can. And one usually has a coil of wire around it. And the current through that coil of wire causes the thing to pop open. One does not, I don't think. And so it's constantly, so with these relays here, I don't think we're going to get enough current draw through there to cause the flasher to pop open and close. I had a long discussion with Brendan about this, and that's the way I understood it. If you don't have the current flow, the flasher can't, open and close the contacts. You got to have heat. Current causes heat, causes them to pop open. They cool down almost instantly and close again. Every time you hear that thing in your car, from under the dash, it goes clink, 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 clink. What's happening is those 2 contacts are opening and closing. They're heating up and opening and closing again. Open and close, open and close. So I'm going to give it a try just to see if anything works. But if it doesn't, we won't know anything until we hook up the 2 front parking lights. That'll give us the required current draw, I think. Well, as expected, we got nothing. Matter of fact, the the switch, which is located on the console, on the roof, on the inside of the car, doesn't light up, nothing at all. It's dead as a doornail. I don't know. We'll worry about it later. Right now my hands are getting cold again. It's icy cold. And I'm going to do a quick vacuum out of the trunk. And that's going to be it for today. By the way, just for a little fun, well, it was blowing. See what I'm talking about? Is that amazing or not? It went from no horn to now it just wants to blow whenever I touch the steering wheel. Gotta love this car, I swear. Alright, she's nice and clean again. Boy, we accumulated a lot of dirt and crap just blowing in, and things I set in the trunk and took back out. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this video here, and we'll shoot for the next one probably on Monday. I'll start on that. But anyway, at least now we know why the horn wires were disconnected on this car, just hanging down in the front. Which means someone's been in the steering column and put it back together wrong. That's what that's all about. Alrighty, until next time, which is part C, we'll see you then.